Alrighty. Well, I'd like to say welcome to Janley Baptist Church's College and Careers podcast, aka video presentation of Sunday school, aka
Layman Seminary.
So we got lots of different names for this. So this morning we're going to kind of have a couple different people talk. I'm going to talk first, and we're going to go through the text, and then we're going to show the method of kind of how I came to what I came to, and present it in that manner. So this morning we're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 24, and really to give a solid background, I like to use this analogy that for those of you in the audience, how many of you have ever flown before? I think we all have flown before. And just like, when you fly in and you're looking out the window and you can see the cities you land in, we're going to kind of do that with the book of Samuel, because we don't want to just come in and slam right into Samuel chapter 24. So really, the whole Samuel originally was a whole book, if you didn't know that. And the Hebrew text, it's all one book. I don't know why. Couldn't really find the answer to why we broke it up into two books in the English Canonical Bible, but it did. And so to start with, 1 Samuel starts with Eli and Samuel being born and being under Eli the priest. Then the history of the Ark of the Covenant, Samuel and Saul, and then we get finally into the dealings of Saul and David, which is chapters 16 through 31. We can break down 16 through 31 into three different areas. David's rise as the new appointed, after Saul they did some naughty things. David was anointed by Samuel, and then at some point David was driven out by Saul between chapters 19 through 20. And then finally, where the section we're in, or the subsection really, is David, which is in exile. And specifically what we're going to be dealing with is David's goodness to two fools. And we're going to see the first fool today, because we're going to be simply talking about chapter 24. Alrighty. So let's see here. It's kind of a long chapter, but we'll break it down into the paragraph level. And I'm going to kind of go through it, and then we'll let Charlie come up and show you the method that he's presented. So let's see here. Would someone like to read the chapter 24, verses 1 through I think it's 7? Yeah.
He's teaching.
I know, but I'm not going to stay here.
Okay. All right, can I use your Bible?
Yes.
All right.
Melissa's covering today, and then she doesn't have anyone in her class.
Okay. Thank you. All right. 1 Samuel.
Chapter 24, verse 1 through 7. Sorry.
All right. So we got a little bit dead air, but we can prepare our lessons, but we never know who's going to be in our classes,
This is true.
And in the summer, you have a lot of people traveling, so. All right. So, 24, 1 through 4?
1 through 7.
1 through 7. After Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told David is in the desert of the En-Gedi. So Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. He came to the sheep pens along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. David and his men were far back in the cave. The men said, "This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into the hands of you to deal with as you wish." Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Afterward, David was conscience-stricken, for having cut off a corner of his robe, he said to the men, The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lift my hand against him, for he is the anointed of the Lord. With these words David rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went his way.
All right, thank you. So,
Hey, Matthew and Lori, come on in. Y'all can sit right here if you want. Go ahead. Y'all sit right next to each other.
Okay.
That's what couples do.
yes. Congratulations on your guys' engagement.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
1 Samuel 24.
Chapter 24, verses 1 through 7 for right now. So basically, that whole paragraph is think of it like it's all background information leading up to what the next few paragraphs, which is David's challenge or David's defense to Saul. Why is he pursuing him? And then Saul's response to David. And so in the New American Standard Version, which is what I studied out of, there was in verse 6 the word that began verse 6 was the word so. So denotes an effect, so that you will be able to do something. So before the word so, you had, that gave you information, and then the reason why you gave that information is after so. And so we see that before the word so, we saw that, his friends, his buddies tried to convince him to kill Saul, and that David got his conscience got the better of him because, he felt really bad for even just cutting off the robe of Saul. David took the role of King Saul being anointed very seriously. And so it'd be like, akin to wrecking your parents' stuff and, maybe coloring it on the table, and they find out about it later, before they find out about it, they feel guilty about it. And so, we kind of says, no, hey, we're not going to kill him, we're not going to do these things, and because of that. Where these events took place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to steal off the wall here real quick a map that we have in the classroom. I meant to do this earlier. But where we're at in this whole realm of things, hopefully everybody can see it. So the Dead Sea is right here, okay? And believe it or not, we're right here, right dead smack on the edge of it, right in between the southern tip and the northern tip. And if you go on Google Maps or Google Earth, it's actually very dry. The whole area along the Dead Sea has nothing but mountains that have nothing growing on them. But the Engedi, or the rocks of the wild goats, is actually the only forest or water that's drinkable area. And so it's kind of one of the reasons why, David's hiding out in the wilderness. Why he would be here is because it actually is going to afford some type of survivability, as well as the caves, which is what they were in, which is why Saul entered in to relieve himself. All right, in the second paragraph of this chapter, it says, now afterward, so as soon as Saul left, David rose and went out of the cave and called after Saul, saying, my lord the king. And Saul looked behind him, and David bowed with his face to the ground and prostrated himself. And David said to Saul, why do you listen to the words of men saying, behold, David seeks to harm you? Behold, this day your eyes have seen that the Lord had given you today into my hand in the cave. And some said to kill you, but my eye had pity on you. And I said, I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Now my father, see the edge of your robe in my hand. For in that I cut off the edge of your robe, and I did not kill you. Know and perceive that there is no evil or rebellion in my hands, and I have not sinned against you, though you are lying in wait for my life to take it. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge me on you, but my hand shall not be against you. As the Proverbs of the ancient says, out of the wicked comes forth wickedness, but my hand shall not be against you. After whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom are you pursuing? A dead dog, a single flea? The Lord therefore be judge and decide between you and me, and may he see and plead my cause and deliver me from your hand. All right, so we see David respond, right? And what's interesting is repetition. We see that he repeats twice that my hand's not against you. And that's important to note because it's if you've ever, he's trying to convince Saul, like, look, I'm not here trying to kill you. I'm not look, I had the opportunity to, and I didn't take it, so would you please get off my back, essentially. Because if you look at the end where it says a dead dog or a single flea, who has the NIV here? Anybody have the NIV?
Wait.
You have the NIV? Does it say the
Yeah.
dead dog? I didn't see
No,
the NIV.
that's the Holman.
You have the whole one?
This is a dead
This
dog.
is
an
NIV.
It just
This is
says
in
the
Holman
same?
NIV.
Okay.
Okay. Does yours say the dead dog or a dog of some kind?
This is a dead dog if we.
Okay, cool.
And this is color coded too, so it's awesome.
Well, there you go. What's cool about this is when you take a look at the Jewish culture, dogs were, in American culture, we love dogs, right? Everybody pretty much loves dogs. But in the Jewish culture, it was completely exact opposite. Dogs were filthy, dogs were not part of they were disgusting, they were shunned upon. They would probably, if we was to transport them in time and space and bring them here to our culture, they'd probably freak out in some people's houses because why do you have this nasty creature living in your home, regardless of the size? And so when David, he asks three questions. For whom the king has came out, whom are you pursuing? And then he compares those two questions to, are you coming out against a dead dog or are you coming out against a single flea? Like, how many of you guys would pursue a flea? I mean, a flea is a tiny, insignificant insect, right? And so he's challenging Saul, like, why are you doing this? Doesn't make any sense. And those key words in the text, but if you see therefore in 15, does everybody have the word? I know different versions have different things. No, therefore? Okay. In the New American Standard, it says the Lord therefore. And in this particular version, what that means is David says all of that to say this: let God be the judge of this whole situation between you and me, and may He see and plead my cause and deliver me from your hands. We go then down into verses 16 through 22. Would someone?
I'll read it.
Go ahead.
When David finished saying this, Saul asked, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" And he wept aloud. "You are more righteous than I," he said. "You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly. You have just now told me about the good you did to me. The Lord delivered me into your hands, but you did not kill me. When a man finds his enemy, does he let him get away unharmed? May the Lord reward you well for the way you treated me today."
Is that all the way to 22? All the way to 22.
Oh, okay, all the way to 22. Okay.
Yep.
"I know that you will surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will not kill off my descendants or wipe out my name from my father's family." So David gave his oath to Saul. Then Saul returned home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold.
All right. So we see, obviously, this is Saul's response, and Saul realizes, man, I could have been a dead dude. And, he cries. Actually, in the text, Saul actually feels pretty bad about it. Like, he realizes. I think there's some, now, incidentally enough, he tries to kill him again, so I don't know if this is like fake tears, or if this is real tears, real honest. The thought of dying, kind of got over Saul. Maybe it was man, I could have been dead, and then, later on, kind of, okay, well, I'm going to go after him again. But he does, have an emotional response to this whole situation, and basically acknowledges, you're a better man than I am, because I would have killed you. Had the shoe been on the other foot, you wouldn't be here right now. It would only be me. And basically at the end, he then he says all of that to say this: so please, because you're more righteous than I am, please don't blot out my family's name from the books. And it's almost like a foreshadowing of, with our case, don't blot my name out of the book of life type ordeal. I kind of see some imagery there. In that sense, when he's asking you, don't destroy my family, because in the cultures around there at that time, that's what you did to your enemies. You literally blotted them out of the earth. There was no forgiveness of any of that type. And so he basically asks David to make that oath, because he's acknowledging, one day, hey, you're going to be king. I'm not going to be here anymore. and please don't seek revenge on my family, which is really important. So David make that oath, and you know what's interesting? If you go into 2 Samuel, when I can't remember the boy's name, but one of Saul's descendants during in 2 Samuel gets maimed pretty badly.
Mephibosheth?
Yes, Mephibosheth. And David actually honors, this is the oath that David honors, and he takes that young boy into his home and takes care of him as one of his sons. So it's interesting to see how honorable David is, even further down the road in dealing with that. So I just wanted to go through the text this morning and kind of bring up some points, get our juices flowing as far as thoughts is concerned. But we're going to let Charlie come up here now.
You don't want to go into anything else?
Well, no, I just kind of pointed out the texts. I'll let you show the inductive bible method. We'll talk about the application, unless you have any questions.
Well, stay up there for a second. You found out that you were going to be teaching the young adults at what time this week? Or what day?
Friday afternoon.
Friday afternoon. I'm sure you were busy like normal, working and all that other stuff. So what did you do to prepare?
Well, the first thing I did was I went to what you're going to teach on, so I'm not trying to take too much of what you're going to say. But I went to the Constable's Notes online, and I just got the outline. And I was at work yesterday. I had to work a 12-hour shift yesterday, but you probably can't see it, but it's written in pencil there. I just wrote down the outline, and I figured out kind of the subsection and the sections and the segments that we were in. And really focused observations. Looking for those keywords is one of my big things.
Okay.
And we've talked, if you've watched some of our last videos, we've talked about the structural markers. I'm not really good at that. I'm just going to say that.
Okay.
I'm working on it, but I'm not very strong. But I can find key words. I'm good at finding the words and kind of deriving some main points from there. Really, I spent about 2 to 3 hours on it, about as much time as I had. But also, you can't see it on my phone, but I highlight different things. I go into Word and I highlight the different who's speaking here and so on and so forth in different colors, and it really helps pop the text out and kind of show me where.
Yeah, we'll probably make a copy of that and demonstrate it to other people.
Sure.
But you were prepared, but you didn't have any students for that particular class. Your wife went in another class, except John came in here. So you never know who's going to be here. But the point is that you were prepared, and the Constable's Notes helped you in that process.
Absolutely.
And that's what I want to demonstrate. In other words, what you've just done proves what I'm fixing to show, how helpful it is.
Absolutely.
So, all right, I'll go from there, guys. Okay. So, as you see, we're talking about asking interpretive questions. Actually, I shouldn't have that on there. That's from the previous slide, but we'll let it run. Oops. Okay. When you do an observation of a book as a whole, you're looking at the big parts, right? That's what Josh did, where he gave the main points of the outline, which I'm fixing to demonstrate. Well, you find the general materials. And so the general materials of Samuel is biographical. It's divided up in like Eli and his descendants, and then David and Saul and all that type of stuff. So it revolves around people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one way to get to the major divisions, especially if you're in a tight spot and you find out you're going to be speaking on Friday, is consult outlines, which is what we're going to emphasize there. Last week from the previous video, we talked about structural relationships. And here we will see that they're demonstrated at the paragraph level, but they work at all levels of the book. And the interpretive questions will be, okay, you see a contrast. Well, what is that contrast? How is that thing exactly contrasted? We'll see how that all plays out. The reason I wanted to go into this about the outlines is, number one, I knew you weren't going to be in the class. And number two, we had talked about it on a previous video, probably one of our earlier on videos, about how if you don't have time and you get caught up in a tight spot, you can do this. And so that's where we're going from there. And John, I'll try to look more to your direction. I'm not used to being on camera.
You can look
so-
at him, that's fine.
No, it's okay. So I'm not getting into the strategic areas, but I just want to say this. All a strategic area is, or passage is inside that structural relationship, that division. It's the main verse that highlights that structural relationship in that particular section. That's all it is. Like the verse that says, okay, that's contrast. You know, it's kind of like that idea there. So, anyway, basically, I wanted to do this because we talked about it, but there's people all around the world that are seeing these videos and they need to know how to do this themselves. The benefit of using Constable's Notes is it's free. It's a commentary that's updated. And Matthew, I taught you this early on. Remember?
Right.
It's a commentary that's updated every year, and it interacts with all the leading commentaries that are out there, and of course his own personal study and stuff like that. But it's very helpful for that consultation. So you'll see the link at the bottom. Go to soniclight.com and Constable's Notes, and you'll find all kinds of PDFs and things like that you can use. And it's free, like I said. Now, using Constable's Notes, and I just want to talk a little bit about outlining. And I drink coffee this morning, so let me slow down my talking. Observation of a book as a whole. Whenever you're looking at an outline, this is usually your main divisions or your Roman numerals. Okay, they indicate the major divisions of the book. Now, when you get into observation of a part of a whole, which we have not even gone into, far as even though we've actually been dealing with stuff at that level in here, those would be uppercase letters underneath the Roman numerals, and then the numbers that would be underneath it would be the segment and stuff. So let me try to do something real quick. This might work. Bear with me out there in TV land. This is kind of an easier way to just demonstrate what's going on. All right, this is Constable's Notes. It should be. Now show up here.
It's a duplicate screen, Charlie, so you're going to have to slide it over onto the screen.
Second screen only. It won't.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's what I do on my TV.
Okay. The only problem is I'm not able to operate it, so I'm not able to scroll down. But this is Constable's Notes, and if you scroll down far enough, well, this is the
It's
screen is so oversized that I can't open up the
It's right.
table of contents.
Page down.
Page down. Oh, yeah, there we go. See, look at all this information. The purpose of the book. You keep going, and you're going to get to their genre. Here's the outline.
That's the outline I was talking about.
Yes, this is the outline that Josh used this morning and what I'm talking about. Your major points, your sub-points, and things like that. The numbers that are underneath them. So that's what I'm demonstrating. So, now I got to get this thing to show up. Where's the mouse, guys?
Down there to the
It's
right.
It's
by
right.
the-
It's down. It's on the bottom right hand corner.
All right. Anyway, hey, the lab is not pretty, you know.
Did you know if you hit that duplicate screen and then you go up to the where it has the little white over the
Lori, will you give me a tutorial later?
Yeah.
I cannot process it right now, but thank y'all. Anyway, so you get an idea about what the outline does, okay? So the different levels of observation we're doing as a whole book, the divisions, the segments, you could take an outline, an existing outline. Now, of course, what's the drawback of that, Josh?
Well, that person has a presupposition to the text,
Uh-huh.
and so therefore they're going to bring that into. I mean, that's just it's natural. Even our own Bibles, the translations are,
Yeah.
it has a presupposition. So
Yeah, the paragraph titles and things like that.
yes,
But you work with what you got at that time.
Absolutely.
And the thing is when you take those shortcuts, you took that shortcut. And so that causes your position to be, I guess you say, in humility or humble, because you're not real dogmatic in saying this is what the text is,
correct,
But it helps to orient, like a flyover,
right.
Okay. Now, if you're going to look at paragraphs, what you want to do is you want to go to freebiblecommentary.org. And there, what you'll see is this right here. This is a screenshot of that. Oh, no. Okay. Thank you all. All right. It's all right. There we go. Okay, so you have paragraph divisions for the NASB, the New King James, the NRSV, the TEV, and the New Jerusalem Bible. But this gives you an idea. Well, if you're making an outline or you're trying to figure out what the divisions are, you can always go here. And these are free. Now notice this is in numbers because we couldn't find one for Samuel, ironically. But anyway, it's something to work with. So this is pretty much what we're going. Josh, can you describe what's going on here as best you can? What you see going on here in this slide?
Oh yeah, so basically, there shouldn't really be any more than 3 divisions in any particular book. Sometimes there's 2.
Constable put 4 though.
The Constable did put 4. But a rule of thumb, that
Right,
would
making
be
your own.
Making your own, no more than 3. And so as you can see, we're in the 3rd division because there's only 31 chapters in the 1st Samuel. It pretty much covers the last half of the book. And then you can see the section underneath the division. That's, I believe, there is, within the 21 through 31, there is, there's 3 sections of the division. You have 16 through 19, 19 through 20, and then 21 through 31. And then you have a subsection of the section, which was what we're in. There was actually 4 of them. We were in the 3rd one, dealing with 24 through 26. And then the subsection can be broken down into segments. Typically a segment is no more than a chapter long. Doesn't always mean that it's a chapter long. Could be less than a chapter, could be a little bit more than a chapter. But again, rule of thumb is that it's a chapter long. And then that's where you break it down into the paragraph level, which is verses 1 through 4, 18, I should say 8.
I don't know what that should say actually. I think I went by their numbers.
In the New American Standard Version, it's 1 through 7, 8 through 15, and 16 through 25. Again, that is dependent upon what version of the text you're using, because the NIV will they'll have multiple paragraphs depending upon who's talking.
Right.
So whereas the New American Standard, it's
in
different.
the beginning of your Bible will tell you how the paragraph divisions are working.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that you've explained that, now explain this stuff right here, the biographical, the stuff in the parentheses, best you can.
So those are those structural markers that you're talking about that show there's a shift in focus there, where we have.
Well, biographical is a general material, but you're right, it is where the structural markers go.
The structural marker, I've indicated that there was a shift there, something happened to where now we're going in a different direction. And the same thing happened in the section. At each section, there was a structural marker that indicated a shift in movement. And it goes all that way, all the way down, even at the paragraph level, where we can see those things.
So what about in the parentheses? What is the significance of this, where it says Samuel is gone and David lost his mentor?
Well,
how does that help us understand the passage that we're dealing with? 1 Samuel 24.
So think of it like a dad. And that's how I think of it. Samuel anointed David and Saul. But Samuel was a God-fearing priest.
Okay.
He really tried to get the people to stay underneath the theocracy, and instead of being underneath the kingship. And he went to him in help, like right before this chapter that we're in the previous segment, which is in it's in the first segment, which is 21 through 22. Samuel helps out David, him and some other priests, because they had Goliath's old sword, and when David escaped Saul the first time, he went to Samuel to hey, what do I need to do? And Samuel gave guidance, protection at that time, because he was basically God's voice for the nation of Israel. Mm-hmm. And so now that that's gone, that could definitely hinder, I wouldn't say hinder, I would say adversely affect David, because now he's still a young guy. He's barely into his 20s at this point. Not much life experience. When you don't have good guidance, bad things can you can make bad decisions.
Right.
Or seemingly innocent decisions, which is a slippery slope leading up to a major fall.
But who ultimately removed his mentor?
Well, I would say God did ultimately.
Right, yeah. If he died.
Right. But he died naturally. I mean, he had a natural death. He was not killed or anything like that.
So there comes a time when you got to stand on your own.
Yeah.
In ministry, right?
Sure.
And things like that. Okay. So, all right. Now look at the 21 through 31. What about that part? How does that tie in?
Well, I mean, it's just the sense of, just as you put, he's running around because he doesn't understand why Saul's trying to do what he does, or
Okay.
doing, because he didn't do anything to Saul.
So he's dealing with rejection, people that he's attached to, who's a servant of God.
Right. I mean, it is his father-in-law, so it kind of makes it a little awkward when
Yeah,
your
I mean,
father-in-law's trying to kill you.
Yeah, I mean, you got several levels of relationship here, and that's bad when you feel like the whole world is rejected.
Yeah.
And this kind of foreshadows Christ, because we know Jesus Christ is the son of David, they're called that and stuff. And so we see that David is being rejected for no reason, right? It's not his fault that Saul did what he did,
Right.
It's
not his fault that he was anointed by God.
Now David's not sinless, as we'll know, but the
Right.
point is that we kind of see that imagery going on here. So what we have is your mentor's gone, the people that are close to you, you're being rejected.
Mm-hmm.
You have no one else to stand on but God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And during this time, he's taking flight, and there's a lot of stuff going on. We'll mention, okay. Now do the same thing with 24 through 26, when it talks about David in light of two fools.
Well, it's focusing down. Think of it like you're just coming to a point.
Uh-huh.
And so this is one part on, as you're heading to a point, when you're zooming in, that David is the first fool is Saul. That's who we're dealing with today, or right now. And the second fool is Abigail's husband, which I can't remember his name.
Nabal, which
Nabal.
means fool.
Which does mean fool. And it's David's response to both of those people.
Okay, your mentor's gone, you're being rejected, everybody, and you're dealing with two fools.
Right.
How hard is that?
That's tough.
That's like a pastor just got out of seminary, I mean, no more mentors, no more people in his life to help him and stuff, and then people reject him because, hey, you're too godly now, you're a holy roller or something, Yeah. So you got that going on there. All right. So, but then we're focusing on Saul being a fool.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the outline that Josh was talking about. I underlined the particular section that we're dealing with, as Josh greatly explained about David's rise as the new anointed in 16 through 19, and David driven out by Saul. Now here it is in more detail. Okay, we see that 21 through 31 deals with David being in exile. His mentor's gone. He's been rejected. He's on the run. Okay, so this right here is where I start getting into some interpretive questions based off of what Constable's note. I'm asking questions about his outline, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, my first question, is Saul involved in 21 through 31? Why do you think I asked that question? If Saul is involved in 21 through 31?
Well, because he has as one of his sub-bullets. If you're challenging his outline, is that...
Well, that was not up there whenever I saw it. Because my point is that it's biographical division, right?
Sure.
But now its shift is focusing on David. Even though Saul is mentioned in 27 through 31, so that was one of my interpretive questions. Yeah, I forgot. Y'all are seeing what I had put in for the PowerPoint to show the outline. But that was one of my initial questions by looking at the major point. Is Saul involved there? And I said yes in chapter 23. So Saul's pursuit of David. Okay? Now what about this question? Is this a travel narrative? What in Constable's outline would make me ask that question? What is a travel narrative?
I mean, it's about your movements.
Right. You see these in the gospel. Jesus goes to this place, or even in travel itinerary is another name for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the type of genre or subgenre type of writing that we got going on here. So it says David's initial movements, right? And so my next question is, how did David come upon these fools? Because we're narrowing it down to talk about the fools, right? So what happened? What occurred before David met the first fool, Saul, in that particular passage?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember?
Well, of course. I mean, it's the whole. He killed Goliath. He rose in, position and prestige because he was fighting battles.
Okay.
Saul didn't like it. He tried to kill him. He threw a spear at him. And Jonathan has helped him out, get him back under graces. There's been a lot of things that have led up to this.
Well, there's some specific things that happen while David's on the run, while Saul's pursuing him in this particular area, that I think, the principle being is a lot of times whenever you're faced with a test, God strengthens you to face that next test. So the idea is that the present test helps you prepare for the next test.
Right.
Okay? So what about this question? Why does the proceeding end in Saul's reign? Why does the book of Samuel end in Saul's reign? Right here. What do y'all think about that?
Why do I think it ends there?
Uh-huh.
Well, that's a.
Is it really the ending?
No.
Well, no, it's not.
Because 1st and 2nd Samuel are 2 books, right?
Well, right. In the original text,
So this
they
is-
were 1 book.
Yeah,
So.
right. So why does this section end in that way? Because
The
who's going to
climax.
take over?
David.
Right. Saul is finally dealt with. Now things are going to shift to talking about David in a new light. And then and so in Samuel, he's the anointed one, not yet in the office of a king. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that has application for someone that's in ministry. Say you have the gift, say you have the ability, but you're not yet in the office. You may not be a Sunday school teacher, you may not be a pastor, you may not be a teacher, right? And I'm mainly speaking to the audience out there because there's people all around the world that are in these situations,
Right.
And so you have to know how to work with other Christians in your church. You have to know how to work with other people, and you have to know how to recognize the anointing and how to treat the anointed ones of God. But at the same level, all Christians are anointed, right? We all have the Holy Spirit within us. So when David is dealing with Saul at a certain level for application purposes, this helps us to understand how we can treat each other right. Where Saul's getting angry and hatred and malice and all this, David is remaining humble. He's trying to minister to him. But it also points up the idea that in the midst of ministering, a lot of times we get rejected. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty tough. Your mentor's gone, you're rejected, and then when you try to do good, you get rejected even more. That makes you want to give up. I mean, that makes you want to be burned out. And that's one thing that Pastor Mark, that one book, Church, Why Bother, emphasizes, that when you feel like you're getting burned out, because you're dealing with people and things like that, remember you're working for God. Whether you're working in a secular job or a sacred job, if you want to use that term, you're working for God. Okay? So, how does this relate to the book as a whole? What I've been doing as we were looking at the previous statement about the mentor, about the rejection, is I'm trying to tie in everything that's been said before at those levels to try to see what purpose our passage fits in that,
Mm-hmm.
What would be missing if it wasn't there? So what purpose for the audience does it serve? Well, I was telling Josh that David is representative. He's what's called a microcosm, a little world. And basically how David responds is basically to tell Israel, this is how you should respond. Okay? Alright, check this out, guys. This is what's happening in 21 through 31. In 21 through 22, look how many times David is having to flee. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 times, right? So you're on the run, man. You're being rejected. You're having to depend on God. You're probably doing a lot of crying. You might have wrote Psalms during this time,
But it did say Psalms 57 and 140 something. He may have read.
Possibly, yeah. Okay, but what happens? You mentioned this, Josh, about Saul slaughtering the priests. Why did Saul kill the priests?
Because they helped out his enemy.
Right. And how did they help him in specifics?
They gave him food, and which was supposed to be for the priests, and then they gave him Goliath's sword, so they gave him weapons and armor.
Okay. I think that there's some things that happen in there. We're not even zoomed in enough yet to talk about it yet, but I think there's some things that happen there that specifically help him to deal with this test that he's going to be facing in our passage.
Right.
Okay, so we see Saul's pursuit of David in 23, right? Now check this out. First, David is rescued. Now, when you've lost your mentor, when you've been rejected, you're dealing with all these problems, it's nice to be rescued, right? You need some relief because you feel like you're going to break. You've been serving God and you've been faithful, you've been loyal, and everything's going bad for you. So it's nice whenever things turn around, you know?
Mhm.
We're not promised that on earth. We know that when we receive our rewards, that God's going to make balance everything out at that time. But we're not promised to have all these blessings and stuff on earth.
Right.
Are y'all familiar with Psalm 73? Basically, Psalm 73 talks about a person who, and I need to watch my time. What time is it? 'Cause there's no
10:34.
clock on here. Okay, we're good. There's this person, he's angry. He's like, man, the wicked, they have everything going on for them. They get blessed and all this. And he's talking about this, and it pretty much goes almost through half the whole psalm. But then you get to the part, and he says, but then I went to your holy temple, and I was reminded of their end. So the idea being is that whenever you're feeling like, man, we get the short end of the stick, you know, we having all these hard times because we're Christians or whatever, and things are not just for you, and you think the unbelieving world is prospering and being blessed, we have to remember their end. We have to remember that we're going to go on into eternal life, you know, and God is going to deal with things justly. But still, it's nice whenever you get to see a little bit of heaven on earth, you know. You get to be refreshed, that oasis.
Yeah.
Think how that ties in with the En-Gedi thing. All right, we'll get there in a minute. So David's escaping, right? Now David's in the wilderness of Ziph. Not Oz, but it kind of sounds like that, you know, all these names. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring up the pictures if I can. This is from Dr. Dean's PowerPoints, and I know it's not on there yet. Be patient with me. Okay, second screen only. We're going to look at some pretty pictures, okay, guys? All right, here we go. So this is, whoa, too fast. All right, this is Dr. Dean. He's actually teaching on Samuel right now. His stuff is free and it's online as well. But anyway, look, he's got a way prettier PowerPoint than me. So he's talking about the verse. Now check this out, Josh. Kind of like what you're doing with the map. But these shows all the different places that he was going to, right? Where he was on the run. There's the En-Gedi spring right there. Okay? Check that out. So that's the En-Gedi and the Nahal. Here's some more pictures. This is them actually on the, this is them there, you know, on the trip and stuff. So there's like the oasis aspect of things going on. There's the mountain stuff, you know, rocks on the wild goats that Ether's named after. And so I just wanted y'all to see some pictures real quick, you know. You know, he's got a couple other things, but he's just going through the text. Real good job, and this is all free to download. Anyway, so y'all get an idea? I mean, Josh does good at giving imageries and maps, but that's pretty good too. So, thank y'all for that. Okay, let me hit this button here. Oh, I exited pretty fast there. All right, so back to the PowerPoint. Uh-oh.
You're there.
Okay. So David's in the wilderness, right? What in 23:15 through 18 it mentions Jonathan encouraging David. What does Jonathan tell him there?
I don't remember.
Well, let's check it out because I don't know. Grab it real quick. Because it's weird, because we just studied Jonathan, right? Last week.
Mhm.
But we didn't deal with this passage. I don't remember this passage. If we did.
It says, now David became aware that Saul had come to seek his life while David was in the wilderness of Ziph at Horish. And Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David at Horish and encouraged him in God. Thus he said to him, do not be afraid, because the hand of Saul my father will not find you. And you will be king of Israel, and I will be next to you. And Saul my father knows that also. So the two of them made a covenant before the Lord, and David stayed at Horish while Jonathan went to his house.
Was that in last week's lesson?
I don't think so, no.
I don't think so either. But that's really interesting that God used Jonathan to strengthen David. Right? And it's in the context of the covenant. That's very important. So he gets rescued. He escapes. He's getting refreshed by Jonathan. Okay? Now, I wrote Constable's observations right here. He says in 21 through 31, David is growing more refined in this exile. So, in other words, if you feel like the people that you look up to or you're moved in your life, like the mentor, if you feel like you're going through rejection and you're not doing nothing wrong, you know, it may be part of the refinement process of God. And so, therefore, Israel must mature like David does here. Israel needs to grow up. In 21 through 22, David is fleeing Saul, and in 23, he's dealing with Saul's pursuit, which includes the rescue and the escape, and even the encouragement for Jonathan. So I was like, how does this occur exactly? Why didn't our previous lesson include it? You know, I just wondered about that. I know they can't include everything, but, you know. Okay, now check this out. During this time, during his constable's observations on the wilderness as if thing, he receives information, there's a distraction, a wait in prayer, a prayer answered, and godly people like Abiathar help him, and as well as Jonathan or whatever. So, if we got time, can you read 15 through 23 so we can understand what this is talking about?
Chapter 23?
Yeah,
Well,
23.
I just read 15 through 18.
Okay, good.
But dealing with the rest of it, then the Ziphites came up to Saul at Gibeah, saying, is David not hiding with us in the strongholds of Horish on the hill of Hakilah, which is in the south of Jeshimon? Now then, O king, come down according to all the desire of your soul to do so, and our part shall be to surrender him into the king's hands. Saul said, may you be blessed of the Lord, for you've had compassion on me. Go now, make more sure, and investigate and see this place where his haunt is, and who has seen him there, for I am told that he is very cunning. So look and learn all about the hiding places where he hides himself, and return to me with certainty, and I will go with you. And if he is in the land, I will search him out among all the thousands of Judah.
So, it's nice to be refreshed, right? It's nice that when you've been rejected, when friends help you. You know, there's a class called Genesis Process. It's Christian substance abuse and coping class. I was teaching for a little bit. One principle that it says is that we get hurt through relationships, but we must also get healed through relationships. You know, of course, ultimately that relationship is with God.
Right.
But it helps a lot whenever we have believers to help support us, help keep our mind clear and things like that. But there's times in our life where we feel isolated. And we're trying to seek the direction of God. We feel like everything's turning out on us. Things are not working out right. Okay? So, basically we see David is strengthened, but was he ready for the next test? So let me ask y'all that question. Is David ready for the next test?
From our previous reading, yeah.
Okay. Whenever someone says, God is a good teacher, right?
Mm.
A good teacher makes sure that his students have the materials to prepare them for the test, for whatever they're going to go through, right?
Sure.
Now, the student may fail the study, but God has made the provision, you know, for us in the same way. So, it's no surprise when the mentor was removed. It's no surprise when the rejection occurred. God, that was all part of his refining process. And each time that something occurs in our life, it's a test, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's an opportunity. Know that if you're tested with something, that God has given you the provision. And we know this even from the New Testament. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, no temptation, or perismos, the word for test is trial. It's the same word. It says, no temptation or test has overtaken you, except that which is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tested beyond what you're able. But with that test or temptation will provide the way of escape so that you may be able to endure it. Now, he's not saying you're going to get out of it. He's saying you're going to endure it. But he said that, so if you're going through a test, God has given you the provision to face that test. So don't ever think that this test that you're going through is overwhelming you. You know, just be dependent on God in that time. Cry out to God and recognize that, you know, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Okay, so we're going in the application there. So what we see so far is, from the biographical materials, we saw that determined the main divisions. Our division depicted David facing tests without his mentor. Our section gives one of the tests as being betrayed by a friend and a servant of God. The previous chapter prepared David for the next test. Our subsection shows David acting wisely when dealing with two fools in a serious situation. I mean, they're called fools, right? But this is not just like you're dealing with someone that's ignorant. You're dealing with the king who can kill you. And even in this other situation in Nabal, which we're not going to talk about, how David would have responded would affect how the whole nation would have looked at David, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if use the example of Trump. If Trump does something, it's going to be critiqued, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you didn't have CNN back then, but still, you know, the leadership was going to be critiqued. So, and I'll mention Fox also, so no one thinks I'm being against, you know, Democrats or liberals or something like that. So, NBC or whatever, the rest.
CBS.
Name them all. Anyway, so our segment shows how to respond to authority even when they act foolish. That's our main point right there. Saul is in authority. You got two anointed people, right? But only one of them is in the office. So that means that we are obligated to submit to that person because of their office. And military, Thiem said y'all would relate to this idea. You know, you're saluting the rank, not the person. Mm-hmm. So, you know, there's that aspect going on there. So think about that. How do you respond to authority even when they act foolish? When you don't like what they're doing, when you think that they're being a bad stumbling block. And I'm not going to go in detail about this, but I've interacted with some people who have had this difficulty in various churches about this. And this has been, in previous years and recently, this passage has been helpful for me to help them with that, you know, trusting in God. 1 Samuel is like the book of Proverbs. The reason I say that is Proverbs was written to show kings or princes or people that go up in a royal home how to conduct themselves. You know, how to have social etiquette and how to have wisdom as you're ruling as a king. But because it was preserved in the book, it became for the whole audience. Well, we're all in the royal family now, right? Mm-hmm. We're part of the royal priesthood, you know, of Christ and things like that. And so understand that we can act kingly. We can act loyally. We can act in the right type of way. Thiem called it the honor code, which is another military term they use. But anyway, so here we are. We're narrowing it down to our section, and we're checking 1046. 1046. All right. So, okay, 24 through 26 highlights divine protection that keeps David from shedding innocent blood and unifying all these chapters. So in all these situations, even though David's acting wise and things like this, it comes down to God is protecting David. All the provision, everything going on in his life from shedding innocent blood. Because what's David's famous sin?
Bathsheba.
Is David, well, yes. But the Bathsheba thing was not the main issue. It's what he did to Uriah, his loyal, faithful soldier. So David acted like Saul. The point being in that is just because you've passed previous tests, just because you are the anointed and you're in that office, doesn't mean you can't fall into carnality. It doesn't mean that you can't fall into that trap, you know, getting complacent. So, okay. Anyway, let's keep going on talking about that. And basically the idea about listening to the vice of the world. There's some application stuff you could go into. Now here's the application from the class. The main point from the Lifeway lesson is respect the authorities God has placed in your life. Okay? The way they backed it up, the first point is act with grace toward those who are in authority. Now the subpoints are principles that I drew from their book, especially when the person in authority is vulnerable. Saul was taking a leak or using the bathroom in some other way, and David did not use that as an opportunity to kill him. What we see right here, thanks John.
No, I gotta go.
Oh, I understand. Thank you for all the sound stuff you do and everything else, man.
No problem.
So what we see is that in the midst of touching his robe, he was convicted, right? So the way we act in grace to those in authority is we have to be sensitive to the conviction of the Holy Spirit. And so that involves the confession of sin. We need to be graceful to people in authority, especially when there's others that are trying to get you to act disgraceful. You know, you got some people, you may be trying to make the right decision, but you got some other people over here giving you bad advice. Do y'all remember the story when the kingdom of Israel was split after Solomon?
Kind of vaguely.
Jeroboam and Rehoboam. One of them refused to listen to his older wise men,
Oh, yeah.
and he listened to the younger men. So you can see a lot of foreshadowing in all this going on here. Okay, so the second main point is speak with grace and conviction to those that are in authority. By being humble and to show humility. Okay? Resisting the crowd, that's the voices of the world, and by recognizing God's sovereign choice. Because God put Saul in power. God has put everybody that's in office in power. Whether that's in the government, in the church, or whatever we're talking about, God has put them in power. At some level. Okay? Now it talks about by being distinct in verse 11. The idea that David did not act like those other people. Those other people that were saying, hey, this is our opportunity to say that this is God's will for us to take him out. And then here's the main point of these subpoints. Leave conflict with authority figures in God's hands. There's people that they get so bitter whenever the one that's in a ministry or in a position is not acting how they want them to. And they maybe have legitimate gripes against that person, but it's not their role to bring that. That's why the scriptures talk about an elder should not receive an accusation unless it's by several of them. I think 2 or 3 or something like that. So David leaves it to God in this situation, right? And David is loyal to Saul. It's very hard to minister to people that reject you, that are trying to kill you, you know, but yet David did it, and that's amazing. So these issues of authority are your family. We have authority in our families. We have authority in church. We have authority in government, and we have authority at work and school. Okay? And so you just think about in your life right now, Matthew and Lori.
Yeah.
Y'all may have some different authority issues, right? Changes in y'all's life, you know. I mean, are you still working at the YMCA?
Yes, I'm still working there. I've been
Okay.
working there for a year now. So.
Yeah, so I mean, not only are you in authority, but you have to deal with authority.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's an opportunity for you to show Christ.
Right.
You know, and you have opportunities at your other church, you know, and those types of things like that. So, okay. Well, that's it. So, Josh, y'all have anything y'all want to comment or add to before we burn off?
Mm-mm.
No? Alright, so basically, just what it comes down to is that if you boil down the whole message, is this idea right here, that you treat the person in authority right,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's a lot harder when you lost your mentor, when you've been rejected. But thank God that there's people there to refresh you. Thank God
Right.
that there's people in fellowship and listen to good wisdom and stuff like that. Because that will help you deal with that rejection. That will help you deal with that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You gotta remember that God is preparing you for the next test with the present test that you're embracing right now. And if you're going through that test, God is giving you what you can to deal with it. Okay? Josh, thank you so much for your work. It demonstrated exactly better than anything else, you know, that I had on the screen, because you showed people out there what can be done like this, you know. So thanks. Will you pray us out?
Dear followers, we come before you. Thank you so much for this time that we could gather together and just really focus in on your word and learn some tools that we can use in our own lives to enhance our relationship with you, Father. Father, we ask now that we just go in as we just our hearts that are prepared for worship, as we direct our praise and our focus upward. Father, and just ask that you speak through Pastor Mark to us. Just convict us in the areas of our lives that you are trying to help us grow in as we try to be like David and pass these tests and learn from them and grow. Father, Lord, just ask that you bless the rest of their day, and in your name I pray. Amen.
Thank y'all.